Comedian and actor Jerry Seinfeld recently tore the left to shreds over what they have done to comedy. Now, I have long told you that political correctness has been the death of comedy. But I want to play for you what he had to say, and then I want to talk about it. Take a listen to this.
Nothing really affects comedy. People always need it. They need it so badly, and they don't get it. It used to be you would go home at the end of the day. Most people would go, oh, Cheers is on. Oh, MASH is on. Oh, Mary Tyler Moore is on. All in the Family's on. You just expected there'll be some funny stuff we can watch on TV tonight. Well, guess what? Where is it? This is the result of the extreme left and PC crap and people worrying so much about offending other people. Mm-hmm. When you write a script and it goes into 4 or 5 different hands, committees, groups, here's our thought about this joke, well, that's the end of your comedy. They move the gates, like in skiing. Yeah. Culture, the gates are moving. Your job is to be agile and clever enough that wherever they put the gates, I'm going to make the gate.
I want to ask you guys something. When is the last time that you watched a show that was legitimately funny, a sitcom, say? I haven't seen one in a very long time, not a modern one, that is. If you found something that's funny, that's not trying to push wokeness down your throat, please drop it in the comments. I'd like to check it out. But I haven't seen a modern show that was legitimately funny and instead didn't serve as a vehicle to try to push wokeness and the woke agenda. And you see, that's the problem. I think Jerry has a point here. Comedians, for the most part, with the exception of people like Dave Chappelle, are not funny anymore. They are corny at best, most of which are not even funny. And they don't push boundaries anymore. They're afraid to push boundaries. They're too afraid that they're going to offend group X, Y, or Z. And they push the woke narrative of the left nowadays. You know, I don't believe that most Americans give a crap about what a comedian's political views are. It is not the job of a comedian to get up there and grandstand for leftist causes. It's the job of a comedian to make you laugh, to make you forget about the troubles of the world for a while, and also to make you think. Comedy is supposed to be offensive. And the beautiful thing about what is offensive is what is offensive really is subjective to the person hearing it. And that's why we have the First Amendment, my friends. Because offensive speech is subjective. What offends me may not offend you. What offends you might offend me. But the beauty of the First Amendment is that it exists to protect offensive speech, because that's the only speech that needs to be protected. But we have created a culture in which the woke mob is really doing a tyrannical government's job for itself, because they've created a culture in which comedians and other people are afraid to say what they really think, because they're afraid that they're going to offend the group of the day. They're afraid that they're going to offend a gay person or a trans person or a black person or any minority group. They're afraid that they're going to offend the disabled. Offend me. I'm saying that as a disabled person. If you can make me laugh, say something offensive as hell. Most of the time I'm going to find it hilarious. Dave Chappelle is wonderful about this. I'll post a link to a video I did about his latest comedy special. I thought it was wonderful. And he pulled no punches on that. But Dave is one of the few comedians today in the modern era that does not give a damn about what the woke mob thinks. And I think that's why he's successful. Whereas most comedians today struggle because they're too afraid to push the boundaries anymore. They don't want to push buttons anymore. They have instead become talking heads for the woke mob. When's the last time that you saw something like All in the Family, or The Andy Griffith Show, or Sanford and Son? You know, All in the Family and Sanford and Son were special because those shows, I don't know if you've watched them. Fortunately, I grew up with a close relationship with the grandparents. And because I grew up with a close relationship to my boomer grandparents, I was exposed to shows from the 60s and 70s. And the great Norman Lear, in my opinion, made some of the best television that ever has been broadcast. All in the Family in particular was hilarious. It was very irreverent. They didn't care about who they offended. You had a conservative dad who was portrayed to be a bigot, and you had his airhead leftist daughter, and his Marxist son-in-law, who he called Meathead. And they would have it out about very, very hard topics. They would discuss things like abortion and redistribution of wealth and social issues like civil rights. They would have these things out. But they always discussed very hard, socially relevant topics. And they would have it out and they would call each other names. But at the end of the day, they were family. And when times got tough, they stuck together. It was one of those things, my son-in-law may be a meathead, but he's my meathead. My father-in-law may be a bigot, but he's my bigot. And they were able to come together and have hard topics, discuss hard topics, that the nation needed to hear, but do it in a funny way. That's what comedy's supposed to be. And it's not that anymore, because people are afraid to push boundaries. Instead, they want to go with the popular thing. They want to go with what people in power think is acceptable and try to serve as a propaganda wing for the people in power. That's not the job of good comedy. The job of good comedy is to, number one, make you laugh and then make you think. That's the beautiful thing about what shows like Sanford and Son and All in the Family did. They said things that today would be considered racist, but they weren't afraid to talk about it. If you haven't watched either one of those shows, I highly recommend that you do. You will laugh your head off. But I think that's the problem when you have basically central planning in comedy. That's exactly what Jerry's talking about here. When you have a committee of people who decide, oh, this joke isn't funny because it will offend trans people or it'll offend black people. So you can't say that. You don't want to affect your social credit score, do you? And don't think for 1 minute that people aren't trying to put things like that in place in this country, social credit scores. They're trying to set the groundwork for it. And people are too afraid to question the people in power, even through means of comedy. And that's a shame. We need to get back to offensive comedy in this country again. Comedy is a vehicle that challenges norms, doesn't stand up for them, but it makes you laugh and it makes you think. That's what we're supposed to be doing. That is something that should be celebrated. But we need to remember the goal, intent, and purposes of comedy. To be funny, first and foremost, and to develop your craft. If you're a comedian, just the same as with any other person and any other thing, you need to develop your craft and be the best you can. And then you become even better. You become special because you start challenging the people in your respective fields. That's what comedy should be doing. Not being woke talking heads for the mob. If we continue to allow this, they will destroy everything that's beautiful about this country until we're a gray, lifeless blob. That's exactly what they want. If you agree with me, please like this video, please share it, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more content.